The Green Goblin, Spider-Man's most famous and devious foe, is back again, crawling out of the shadows after years of inactivity, to strike at our beloved web-slinging hero once again. But is this new plan just crazy enough to work? Well, let's hop into the extra-length Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50 and find out together, shall we? So then, as we join the comic, we once again check back on in with Curt Connors and the secret living brain project that he was working on for Osborn. It seems that this thing has managed to connect to the internet, and is now starting to send out all sorts of crazy communications, like mentioning Peter Parker by name. Which is, probably not a good thing. Now, where is Peter right now? Well, he's hard at work as Spider-Man, trying to get even with, get this, a dishonest Chelsea real estate agent who was using a window washing lift to take wide-angle lens photos of properties. At first you're thinking, geez, did Spider-Man stop him because he was being a danger to himself or others? Did he do it because this guy was scamming people in the increasingly expensive New York real estate market? Well, he was doing all of that, and also probably because Peter was looking to rent a new place, only to get taken in by one of this guy's scams, which honestly, wow, that is shockingly human and relatable. Where has this been in my Spider-Man book? This scene gets even funnier too, because Norman ends up overhearing Spidey's conversation with this guy, and all he can say is, "Oh, you're not thinking of renting in Chelsea, are you? You know you should buy, right?" Yeah, sorry Norman, but there's a smoking crater where my credit rating used to be. We also learned that Peter got Norman to agree to something called Friendly Neighborhood Fridays, where he doesn't have to come into work, but this is an emergency, so he hightails it to Connors. Obviously, ever since his last run-in with the living brain, Peter has been horrified that this thing might actually either remember that he's Spider-Man or be able to use its processing power to figure it out. Thankfully, though, this message that's got everyone up in arms simply reads that Peter Parker is not Spider-Man, which, Peter's happy to not be outed by the living brain, but at the same time, it's like, hey, you stupid brain, you're making me look bad. Of course I'm Spider-Man. What on earth could any of this possibly mean? Well, Peter isn't 100% sure, but he's sure to head back to Oscorp to regroup with Norman and talk things out. It would seem that Norman is actually hard at work doing acquisitions, which is something the new Oscorp seemingly wasn't interested in until right now. Osborn also thinks that Connors and his whole team should be kicked off the project because basically they ended up doing the very thing they hired them to stop. But wait, it seems that the living brain was obsessed with a lot more than just Spider-Man, because in its many computations it ended up also coming up with the exact code phrase to open up Norman's Gold Goblin vault. Norman is certainly surprised by this, but he's not worried. He's actually been pretty upfront with Peter about all the work he's been doing as the Gold Goblin. However, Peter keeps reading from the piece of paper and ends up saying yet another code phrase that opens up a vault behind the vault, revealing not only a whole secret armory of Green Goblin weapons, but also the horrible truth that Norman's mind had once again twisted by his evil alter ego since that last run-in with Kraven the Hunter a few arcs ago. The funny thing too is that once Norman realizes that he's caught, he's not even mad, he's more disappointed than anything. He was hoping he could have strung Spider-Man along for a little longer, made his re-debut bigger, more important. But no time like the present, and it's not like he hasn't had anything planned for Spider-Man, including but not limited to dusting off some of his classic goblin gas, the stuff that blocks Peter's spider sense and makes him, essentially human. Norman always had access to this stuff, and yet he just stopped using it at a point. The true tragedy about this return to the dark side is that the Norman we've been following this whole time since Gold Goblin is still very much trapped inside the Green Goblin. Norman actually had no idea what his evil alter ego was doing, and in fact he says to Peter when questioned the only reason he did this was to try and protect Peter from getting infected by the Goblin's sins. Hell, Green Goblin even says their relationship is so much different now because Peter was a goblin. The Green Goblin was inside Peter's mind, and they ended up committing a bunch of crimes together. Peter is, however, quite angry about this turn, though sadly also not surprised. Despite all the hopeful things he had said to Norman in passing, in his heart of hearts he always knew that the Green Goblin would return, because he always returns. He's his own personal boogeyman. But in a nice and very much appreciated change of pace, Spider-Man actually acts like he's been in this situation once before, and we learn that he's actively been readying himself and making arrangements for the inevitable day that the Green Goblin would return. In fact, Spider-Man does an excellent job playing the Goblin by getting him to take the fight to Peter's own lab in inside Oscorp. Gobby thinks he'll be able to find something important to Peter here to use against him, and when he grabs the bug from his old Oscorp costume, he ends up getting sprayed with gas. Yeah, apparently Spider-Man went out of his way to create his own version of the goblin gas, only this stuff takes away Norman's power. Wow, that's actually really damn clever on Spider-Man's part. Meaning, as we head into the next phase of the fight, the two men are actually on more even footing now than they ever have been before, Spider-Man even managing to get the upper hand. It's with his back against the wall, though, the Green Goblin ends up pulling out probably his dirtiest trick yet. Again, you'll remember that the Green Goblin had actually taken control of Peter's mind a few arcs ago. Well, it turns out that when Gobby was in the driver's seat, he actually ended up doing a bunch of stuff we never saw, like experimenting with the Winkler machine. You know, the same machine that managed to trick Ned Leeds into thinking he was the Hobgoblin for years. Well, Norman turned the machine on Peter and was sure to implant a special code phrase inside his brain that he now chooses to activate by saying a little poem.
Dr. Jekyll was heckled by Peter's pride, so he fed the boy to Mr. Hyde.
And this ends up being all it takes to completely transform Peter into a goblinized version of himself, meaning that the living brain was actually 100% right when he said that Peter Parker is not Spider-Man. He meant it as a warning. The Green Goblin's return also ends up having major ripple effects throughout the Spider-Man world as well, as we see Kraven the Hunter return to the place that he buried his magic spear, only to become much too acutely aware that the Goblin is free once again and a new reign of terror is sure to follow behind. And so that was Amazing Spider-Man issue number 50, everybody, an extra-sized issue that they spent a long time building up to, and goddammit, I actually kind of enjoyed it. In fact, I'll even go as far as to say that this is probably one of the best issues in this entire Zeb Wells run. I know that isn't saying much, but hey, credit where credit is due. We can point to a lot of problems in this modern era of Spider-Man, Lord knows I have, but I think something we can all agree actually ended up being much stronger than anyone ever could have considered was Norman Osborn's flirtation with the good side. We always knew he was going to turn bad again eventually, that's just kind of how these stories work. Even Spider-Man was aware of it in one of the few times he seems to actually be proactive during this whole run. But what makes the whole thing work, though, is that they paint it with this real sense of tragedy about the whole thing. Norman Osborn falling off the wagon and becoming a goblin again is kind of like seeing a beloved friend or family member struggle with addiction. And the fact that Peter said that he trusted him for so long only to reveal that he never actually trusted him at all, that really kind of hits like a ton of bricks. It just means these guys have been lying to each other the whole time, going through the motions. And the extra salt on the wound, the thing that really made me enjoy this story, is the fact that at the end of the day, Norman did this for Peter. He was trying to save him from a dark fate similar to his own, and in the end, it only ended up making stuff worse. Again, that is effective storytelling. Of course, I'm not going to get my hopes up too high because this is just the opening salvo in a much longer story. There's still a lot of race left to run, and goddammit, I've been burned so many times in this series by liking a first issue only to have the story completely crap the bed by the end. Still, though, for what it's worth, I would give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Peter wasn't absolutely insufferable in this one. In fact, he felt more like Spider-Man in this story than he's felt like for a very long time. And while we can certainly debate when it comes to Zeb Wells writing heroes, he certainly knows how to write villains, and Norman's return to the Green Goblin actually had a lot of pretty good pomp and circumstance behind it. The big question moving forward, though, is can they keep this kind of positive energy, or will it all end up falling on its face again? I don't know, but I'm certainly going to be here to figure it out. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.